Hey everyone, how's it going? It's your boy Evan on another episode of A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast. I finally found a way to get my personal intro for myself, shoehorned right away for efficiency's sake. So, with uh, no further ado, I will introduce the co-pilot for today's next installment of Murica Month. Chris, say hi to the nice individuals listening to this show.
Hi, you people.
And with the pause of indeterminate length now out of the way, we'll dive right into our topic that we are covering for this week's edition of Murica Month. But before we do that, I'll just give one last shout out talking about Murica Month. This is, I believe, the second to last topic. And so there's not going to be another poll after this point because we only have one topic left. But if you have not been following, due to America 250 and the month of July, we have been covering all America-themed topics during this month. And I just wanted to shout out to the Discord. I thank you so much. We thank you at A Fork in Time for your participation, voting in the polls, talking about the different topics. It's just been really fun seeing the conversation and seeing the votes come in. And due to popular demand, we are releasing this topic as our next to last Murica Month episode. And so, for our active listeners, they're not going to be shocked at what this fork is. But Chris, I'll still leave the setup duty to you. And maybe for those who don't follow as much, it'll still be a grand surprise.
So, this episode is on a different ending for the Battle of Long Island / Brooklyn Heights / Brooklyn. Basically, to kind of make this make a little bit of sense, that right after the Declaration of Independence was signed, which is what we're actually celebrating 250 years of, but we're getting kind of close to 250 years of this because it was basically 2 months later, mid to late August, after the Declaration of Independence was signed. George Washington, as the commander of the Continental Army, realizes that New York City, what is today New York City, I guess is very important to point out, because I'm going to get into some of that soon. But basically, New York Harbor was key. Because it was a major shipping harbor, major trade point, but also it was a very important cut point. In other words, if you control New York Harbor, you're very well placed to control the Hudson River going up into upstate New York and cutting off New England.
Essentially, you bisect the colonies. You're able to cut off a lot of the resistance activity that's very strong in the New England area from more of the mid-Atlantic and southern states.
Right. And that was kind of we touched on it a little bit, actually, in the Benedict Arnold episode. He was at that point, by that point, the British did control New York City. By the way, spoiler alert, in all of the scenarios we're talking about, in our timeline and in what we're about to discuss, the British wind up in control of New York City because, hey, funny thing about like a collection of different islands, a navy makes it really easy to control those things.
And one country in this conflict may or may not have the undisputed strongest navy in the world at this point.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, it's not the country that just started. That is less than 2 months old.
That's less than 2 months old and struggles to raise the funds necessary for a land army.
Interesting side point. I have a lot of these planned out. This is not even the one I was telling you about, by the way.
Oh, I figured it wasn't, but
during these engagements, first use of what some people consider a submarine device. It was basically like an American had basically took a barrel, put a propeller on it, went into the Hudson River and tried to ram British ships. So this was kind of like one of the first submarines. However, in our timeline, George Washington basically divided his forces between the island of Manhattan and Long Island. Now, to be clear, to kind of help people visualize this, Long Island is, if you ever look at a map, it's pretty easy to see what Long Island is. It's the part that
pretty long.
It's literally like why you can't go due south from Connecticut or Rhode Island and get to the open ocean.
Pretty much. Fun fact, there are only 2 states in the United States that have more people that live on an island than on like the mainland. One is obviously Hawaii because it's literally just an archipelago, but the other state is New York. More people live on Long Island than on the mainland in New York. So fun geography fact.
So I'm gonna go ahead and you may not know the answer. I'm just interested in this, by the way.
Sure.
What do they count as the mainland?
Sorry, what was that?
What do they count as the mainland? Because my question to that is, Manhattan is an island.
It is.
And I understand that there are probably more people on Long Island than actually in Manhattan itself. But for your balance,
I get what you're saying on that, Chris. Yeah.
Or does Manhattan count as an island and therefore Manhattan and Long Island? Or
well, I think that piece of trivia that I learned was mainly just like I looked at the map that they showed and it just showed the split between upstate New York, the mainland, and Long Island. So I'm pretty sure they include the boroughs of New York in there, which has most of the population. So, but I don't know. That is a very good question. That is a good point.
Except, yeah. However, back to kind of what I'm trying to get at here.
We digress.
Oh, we're gonna digress so much.
We really are. It's gonna be fun though. It'll be fun digressions. We promise it has a point.
Here's kind of an important point that I kind of was picturing to get to this. What Long Island actually has 4 counties on it: Norfolk, Suffolk, Kings, and Queens. You live in San Diego County, California.
Yep.
Which is San Diego County, and then part of San Diego County is San Diego City.
Hmm?
Most places in the U.S., most cities are part of a county. Thinking about Chicago as part of Cook County, Illinois.
Cook County, right.
Houston is part of Harris County, Texas. New York City has 5 counties
it's
that
split
are
between 5 counties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
New York City is bigger than the counties. 2 of those counties I mentioned, Kings and Queens, on the eastern end of Long Island, are part of New York City today. Guess what borough Queens County is? Queens. Kings County is Brooklyn. So that helps, kind of orient the areas we're talking about now with where we're talking about.
Help set up what we're talking about in this fork. Yeah.
But the other thing to think about is, like, Brooklyn is not Brooklyn.
But Brooklyn is not Brooklyn. Yeah. That's a very important point here. I mean, as far as I'm aware, like, we basically took over, we meaning the British who became the Americans, took over what the Dutch bought from the Indians for a few shiny looking beads.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's got some, financial center stuff going on. It's got some things going on, but don't think of the modern New York, the sprawling metropolis that we think of.
Keep in mind, most of what you're talking about is like Manhattan.
Yeah, and I was going to get into that as well.
What the Dutch bought was Manhattan. Was not even what.
Yeah, not even the main areas we're going to be focusing on. Yeah.
However, basically, for the important thing to understand about this, imagine Manhattan. It is an island. Imagine it as a V of rivers. On the western side is the Hudson River, which will go all the way up to like Albany, upstate New York, that area. By the way, West Point, that very important for the area we talked about with the Benedict Arnold episode. On the eastern side of Manhattan is something called the East River, which is basically like a channel that cuts off Long Island from Manhattan mainland, all of that. To control New York, Washington split his troops between Manhattan and Long Island / the Brooklyn area of Long Island, which is the part closest to New York Harbor, and therefore kind of the best way to support Manhattan and control the harbor. The British don't want to let that happen. They decide the first part of Washington's army they're going to attack is the one in Brooklyn. They land in Gravesend Bay, which is kind of the further southwestern part of Brooklyn. March up towards what is today called downtown Brooklyn, what is the part of Brooklyn closest to Manhattan, closest to New York City, the part of New York City. They actually wind up sneaking out through a place called Jamaica Plains, which is where JFK is today, and sneaking around the Americans, surprising them. And this is where you get the Battle of Brooklyn Heights, where the Americans have,
and correct me if I'm wrong, but they have to actually sneak around that point because there's a narrow gorge, if I remember correctly, right? That they weren't able to get through.
They were. They
marched through it.
The Americans didn't think they would. You know what?
Okay.
Not to throw too much into other things we might have in the can, but it's a little bit like a Thermopylae situation.
The Battle of Thermopylae. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and pause right now. Let's tell them about it.
Sure.
You might notice that this is being released as episode 299.1. Because we do have a 300th episode about Thermopylae. We have recorded it. It'll come out. Hey, after 299.2. However.
Yeah. Bonus features for y'all. Just extra DLC content.
Yeah, it's coming. Basically, the British sneak around up into Queens, come back into the Brooklyn area, and surprise the Americans, defeat them in a battle where, by the way, Maryland actually gets its state name from this battle. There were 400 Maryland Continentals sent to the Continental Army that basically pulled a Sparta, attacked the British, held the line for the rest of the Continentals to escape back to kind of the part of Brooklyn closer to Manhattan. And ever since, Maryland earned the name as the Old Line State because it was a line of Maryland troops that held at this one particular
contrary to popular perception, it does not come from the Mason-Dixon line.
It does not. It does not come from the Mason-Dixon line, which is actually the northern border of Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like to talk about that.
Says the resident Marylander.
says the resident Marylander. I mean, hey, we never committed treason. That's all I have to say about that.
You thought about it.
That was Charles County.
Hey, I mean, are you going to say what your actual home state did?
Dodge the draft. Legitimately got me sent to the principal's office in the 4th grade for telling my teacher that. That was a fun time.
In case y'all don't know, we're talking about North Carolina.
Um, yeah. However, all of this stuff aside, the Americans lose Battle of Brooklyn Heights, retreat to kind of the fortifications right along the area closest to Manhattan. Um, by the way, I will go ahead and explain because I did not know this when we started this episode. I will explain you know what? No, I'm going to come back to that. Battle took place August 27th. August 28th, the British under General Greene kind of push forward, get right up to the fortifications, and they sit there. On the night of August 29th, Washington basically gets all of his troops together and they sneak across the East River to Manhattan. Eventually, they wind up fleeing Manhattan as well when the British land there. This is kind of the first of Washington's successful retreats, which is,
We tend to think of Washington in the United States as like, and to be fair, I'm not, taking a dump on General Washington. He's an amazing guy, man of character, all that. Bleeding force and very important to why we won the revolution. But what's not really taught in history class is to what degree he was not an amazing tactician. And he was most of what got him where he got in the American Revolution on a practical sense was his sense of knowing when to bow out, when to take a tactical retreat so that he wouldn't take any more huge losses.
I would also say this. He was a Virginian. And there was a sense in the Continental Congress that we just, okay, I'm going to go ahead and reveal something else. When I got sent to the principal's office and they tried to call my parents, I made sure they called my Massachusetts-born, Brookfield, New York raised father.
Yeah, I think it'd go a little better.
Rather than my Virginia-born mother.
Yeah.
To tell him I call it the state of North Carolina draft dog. Always pick your jury, people. But the point is, the reason that's important. We've talked about this a little bit, but with the British trying to cut the Hudson River, both here and later on at West Point and all of that, they're trying to isolate